Hello, everyone. Welcome back. That was my welcome to our YouTube channel bow. Welcome. Welcome to flyingcloudzen.org's YouTube channel. This is just a collection of offerings, some just sort of talks, reflections on Dharma, Buddhist Dharma, but also on secular mindfulness practice, on the self-reflective path, the meditative path, the path of awakening, whether that's a Christian path, a secular path, a Buddhist path, a Muslim path, I don't care, who cares? It's all the same, right? It's a human heart wanting to know what human life is about and being brave enough and willing to sit up straight and to ask, what is this? What is this? A lot of different understandings and a lot of different language we can use around that beautiful spiritual impulse, but that's what we're here to do. That's what we're here to do. Because I've been trained in the Zen tradition, the Zen Buddhist tradition. That's the language that I'm the most familiar with, but this is not for Zen folks only. I hope it's for humans. That's our hope, that it's for humans. So today, at least for this talk, I want to talk a little bit about prayer. Prayer in Buddhism. Do Buddhists pray? What is that? If so, what is that? I want to talk about it because I was just recently doing some interfaith work with some of my friends and colleagues at Augsburg University here in Minneapolis. I do some interfaith work with the Augsburg Interfaith Program. There's interfaith scholars, interfaith fellows, and all sorts of stuff that I've done with these dear humans over several years now. And so we're oftentimes asked to present as a panel of people representing different faith traditions or none at all, to talk about how we can use that as connective tissue, essentially, to find areas of shared experience, common humanity. How do we become better, essentially, neighbors to each other, right? Through the lens of religious identity, right? Or lack thereof. So we just did a lovely panel presentation for a large company that wanted to have us come. And one of the people asked about Buddhist prayer. Is prayer in Buddhism a thing? Which is a great question. It's a great question. It's actually a pretty sophisticated question if we look deeply at it. Because the genesis of that, if I understood this questioner correctly, was since Buddhism doesn't really have a creator God necessarily, then I wouldn't think there would be a thing called prayer. That's kind of a safe assumption. I kind of get where she went. I kind of understand why she asked the question the way she did. And I've been asked this in the past. It isn't an unusual question when we're talking about, especially when we're new to Buddhism and we're talking about Buddhism as a whole, to kind of go, what's the place of prayer? So to speak to that today, I'm going to start by telling a very short story about my teacher's teacher. This is the founding abbot, the founding teacher of Minnesota Zen Meditation Center here in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. And Dainin Katagiri Roshi is the name of that lovely human being who opened the Minnesota Zen Meditation Center. And the story goes that one time he advised one of his Zen students to pray. I'm guessing that they were probably a little surprised or taken aback, much like my questioner at the panel yesterday. And the student asked him, well, who am I praying to? Again, a good question, given the Buddhist context of this conversation. And Katagiri Roshi's answer was, it doesn't matter. When you pray, just pray. So I'll repeat that because I think it's significant. The Zen student is talking to him about whatever difficulty or strife or struggling that they were experiencing, whatever suffering they were living inside of. He advised them to pray. Who am I praying to? They asked him. And Roshi said, it doesn't matter. When you pray, just pray. There's a great efficiency and clarity to that answer. That's what Japanese Zen teachers are kind of stereotypically famous for. Few words, lots of layers. Here it is. Bang. Ah, it's a beautiful quality. I wish I possessed that. I have quite the opposite. But there's a lot of layers to that. So as we know, as many of us know, in Buddhism, there isn't really, as we experience it here in the West, a creator God, so to speak. It isn't really denied, but it's also really not supported. It's really not kind of part of the cosmology, right? So ideas about that don't tend to get in people's way, which is why we can have Muslims and Christians and Jewish folks practicing Zen, practicing Buddhism without a problem. But it also means, from a Buddhist point of view, our relationship with prayer, as we tend to understand that here in the West, is a little different. So one of the things we see in Buddhist practice, and this is an idea that a lot of folks are familiar with, is repeated wishes, I'm going to say, for the well-being of all sentient living beings. Metta, we could say, or Maitri, this idea of loving kindness. Pretty common, relatively well known, that in Buddhism, the wish for all beings to be free, for all beings to be at ease, for all beings to be liberated from suffering is pretty common. May all beings be free. Very common Buddhist idea. May all beings be free. May all beings be free. Is that person who is repeating that phrase or including that in their, chanted scripture, is it a prayer? Is that asking a deity or an otherworldly being to answer that request? Are they just stating an aspiration of their heart? Are they imagining that just by repeating that idea, that helps create that energy? Perhaps all of the above, perhaps none of the above. You kind of understand, though, that if you were to hear somebody chanting, especially if they're holding beads and doing a repeated, especially with musical vocalizations, this is going to start to feel a lot like prayer. May all beings be free. May all beings be free. May all beings be free. My understanding of that is that is practice. I'm not interested particularly in arguing over whether or not that constitutes prayer. I'm not interested particularly in arguing over whether or not that idea or that repeated phrase is designed to go to someone. What I am interested in is the act of repeating that phrase in one's heart, even out of one's mouth, in the form of a mantra, in the form of a chant, in the form of a dharani, something that one would practice with. Because to me, practice, the word we use is practice, is used, the word practice is used to describe any of the technology that helps to shape mind. Anything that helps to shape, anything that helps to influence the patterning of mind. And when I say mind, I mean thinking, certainly, but also emotions, also behaviors. In other words, habits of consciousness, habits of perception, habits of intention. So that certainly includes thinking, but it also includes emotion. This is how we shape mind. The spirit of repetition is very, very big in prayer practice, in Buddhist practice, in meditation practice, in all the different faiths, right? Repetition, repetition, repetition. So when I am reciting the Metta Sutra, for example, the loving kindness scripture that has, may all beings be free, may all beings be liberated from suffering in it, those ideas repeated in lots of different ways, what I can feel in myself is I am practicing strengthening the muscle that already exists in me that will turn into, in my very life, thoughts and words and action. I'm strengthening that. I'm strengthening that muscle because I find that that muscle is conducive to the alleviation of suffering. The idea, even the repeated idea, may all beings be free. helps set up and create patterns of perception. I will think a little differently. I will then feel a little differently. I will then act a little differently if I am reminded with frequency, with repeated frequency of my deepest aspiration, my deepest longing, freedom of all beings everywhere, freedom for all sentient suffering beings. You can feel that that aspiration is coming from a place in me that isn't comparing, that isn't trying to win, that isn't going up and wanting to put somebody else down, that isn't trying to gain from somebody else's expense. You can feel it. May all beings be free. So on one level, I can say it's prayer. On one level, I can say that's meditation. On one level, I can say I'm actually exercising the technology of Buddhist shaping of consciousness to change my experience of being alive in hopes that it therefore changes the world in which I live for the better, of course, right? I believe this is of benefit. I believe this will be of benefit. So suddenly it's a tool. It's also a meditation practice. It's also a reminder. It's also a prayer. Okay. So I really appreciate the economy with which Kanagiri Roshi said, just pray. Because my ideas, my own personal ideas about where that prayer is going to, or whether or not that is a prayer, or who's going to benefit or who's not, they're interesting and fine ideas, but they're actually secondary. They're kind of extra, aren't they? What isn't extra, what is primary, what he was, of course, encouraging his student to do is just do the practice. Just pray. You're going to go in for surgery in 3 days. I hope it goes well. My hope for you is that you have as pain-free of an experience as possible. I've just expressed my good wishes for you. Am I praying for you? I don't know, sure. Or not, I don't know. Doesn't really matter. What it means is I am practicing touching the part of me that wishes you well, just like I would wish well for me if I were doing that. I trust that just my repeating that to myself has the effect of beginning to soften this heart, to increase its capacity to connect and to care, right? So what we're talking about here is Buddhist prayer being a practice, a chosen practice, a decision, right, to help awaken our inherent and already existent capacities for strength, for compassion, for connection, for wisdom. It's much more about that than it is about petitioning something from the outside to come in and remove our fear or to give us gain. It doesn't really show up feeling that way, usually. It really is more of a technology of meditation to help polish intention, to help strengthen the capacity, the loving capacity that we all already have, right? This reconditioning. We all know we have the capacity for feeling compassion, and we all the capacity for feel affection, connection, love, wisdom. We all have those things. So it's a choice, a conscious choice to strengthen that. I'm going to repeat that. I'm going to repeat that. I'm going to repeat that. I can see that that would be of benefit, right? So if we want to get really Buddhist, we could say that the term to describe what it is that we're doing, what it is that I'm talking about right now is Buddha Nusati. Buddha Nusati is the Sanskrit term for recollection of the Buddha or recollection of Buddha-like qualities, Buddha Nusati. To recall or to remember, to pull into conscious awareness, qualities of awakening, qualities of enlightenment, qualities of compassion, qualities of wisdom, right? To just remember them. All right, compassion exists right here in me. Oh, right, wisdom exists right here in me. Oh, right, loving connection and the possibility of freedom exists right now in my own consciousness. Buddha Nusati, recalling or remembering, recollecting the qualities of Buddha that I possess. Right? This is what helps move us. This is what helps illuminate our current circumstance, to just remember, oh, right, I've got some of that in me, even if it feels very, very small. This is why you see repeated Dharanis or mantras, phrases, that kind of idea of sort of things to come back to in some forms of Buddhism, you know? You got 5 minutes, so you're waiting for your car to go through the car wash, and so you pull out your little mala, and you, with each breath or with each bead, you recite, may all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be free from fear. May all beings experience awakening and connection, something like that. Those phrases, even if it's a single syllable mantra, not only do they remind us of our intention, but they also tend to kind of create breaks, little kind of, what I'm thinking of is really like stormy water, and then there's like a sandbar where you can swim up and get away from it for a little while. It's kind of like a place for the mind to rest in between sort of the incessant habits of, thinking, comparing, anger, grasping, desire. I wish this was different. I'm always going to the future. I'm always going to the past, right? The normal busy mind, right? Monkey mind, the thing we normally live in. It gives us a nice little break from that, right? I've got a word that I can come back to. I have a phrase that I can come back to. I have the next bead that I can come back to remind me, may all beings be free. Where's my breath right now? Where's my body right now? Is there a space in me that is light? Is there a space in me that is spacious? Is there a space in me that is free? Oh yeah, I remember. Right? It kind of breaks the monologue, the inner monologue that we normally feel almost afflicted by. Right? So that can be a form of Buddha Nusati. I'll remind myself of my capacity for clarity just by using my 5 minutes to pick something up and do something. Oh, suddenly I'm meditating. And if that meditation is may all beings be free, may everybody experience awakening, and I want to call that prayer, or somebody else sees it as prayer, sure, okay, that's a prayer. I'm appealing to the universe, I'm appealing to myself, that's the same thing. Especially in Zen, that's what I'm used to. The not separateness. What I'm saying is in Zen, over and over and over, my teacher said, these Buddhas, these ancestors, these bodhisattvas, these almost supernatural divine beings that we talk about, our teachers, that kind of stuff, the ancestors and the Buddhas and the bodhisattvas, they're not separate from you. They're just functions of you. They're not separate from your own mind. If it helps to see them as separate, go for it. But at some point, recognize it's you. It is your own mind. So it's only a very small simplification, actually, to say that if I pray to Kuan Yin, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, right? Or if I pray to Buddha, or if I pray to Manjushri, or if I pray to Jizo Bodhisattva, I'm actually invoking my own qualities. I'm calling upon my own power. If nothing else, I'm calling upon my own potential for awakening. Maybe I'm praying to the future version of me, who a year from now will have a greater capacity for wisdom than I do right now. Or who 5 years from now will have more capacity for compassion than I do right now. Okay. So that's the wonderful thing about prayer practice. I think it softens the heart in a way that when we call it meditation, we can sometimes miss. I'm very aware that this talk is being given by a Westerner to what is probably a largely Western audience when I choose to say that. In our normal vernacular, we think of meditation and prayer as being pretty separate things, and they awaken in us different emotional tones. Not better or worse, but meditation tends to feel a little, for most of us, tends to sound like it's a more cerebral activity, a more mental activity. And prayer feels like it's more of a heart activity, frankly. We tend to think of prayer as petitionary. I'm asking for something. It can be. It absolutely can be petitionary. It can also be used to express gratitude. It can also be used to express awe. It can also be used to express great and deep devotion to an intention. May all beings be free. And even if we're using prayer in a petitionary capacity, even if we imagine that there is a deity that is receiving it, that's fine. What petitionary prayer basically comes down to is help. We wouldn't ask for something if we didn't imagine that we needed it. And if we imagine that we need something, we're in a place of feeling bereft or lost or incomplete, not whole in some way. And so it's going to come out as help. Even to say the word help, when I hear myself say, oh, help, I immediately recognize, oh, there's a suffering being here. It's me. I'm suffering right now. Right away, even by saying help, I'm beginning to awaken my own heart of compassion. Oh my goodness, there's a suffering being here. Oh, it's me. It's hard to be alive, isn't it? Goodness gracious. Being alive is so hard. We don't have time for anything but kindness. Even to hear myself say the prayer, help, begins to call up in me the response of, oh, I see your suffering. It is hard, isn't it? Let's be kind. Do you feel it? I've kind of answered my own prayer. I've certainly called up the qualities that I'm looking for, which is I just want to be seen, held, heard, understood, reassured. Prayer is very powerful. And I do encourage those of you, especially those of you who kind of imagine that Buddhism has no place for such things, to play with this. Play with prayer for a while. I mean, try it. Recite the Metta Sutra. It's easy to find online. Just Google Metta Sutra. There's a bunch of different translations of it. And if that feels like a prayer to you, good. If it doesn't, that's also fine. But boy, there's a lot of power in reciting our shared human aspiration for the alleviation of suffering for all beings. And there's a bunch of other Buddhist prayers too that might really move something in you. If nothing else, you learned something about yourself. Let's follow Katagiri Roshi's admonition. Let's pray. Yeah, from time to time at least. Let's give that a whirl. Let's make a place in our practice for that. And let's not worry too much about what's prayer and what isn't prayer and where the lines are and what the forms are. And let's not worry about where it goes. Let's not even worry too much about the person offering it. Let's just be present to the prayer itself and trust. Trust in its transformational potential for us as beings that desire to awaken. Yeah. A prayerful life seems like a good thing to live. Let's try that on, see how it feels. Okay, that's enough for me. Thank you for your attention. I hope these are of help to you. Let me know. Let me know what works for you. Any feedback is always welcome in the comments, or drop me a line at flyingcloudzen.org. It's lovely to be practicing with you, and I thank you for your attention today. All right, see you next time. Thanks.